Hello, Mike Ako, and welcome to the AEN hearing. It's Monday, February 8th, 2021. Let's see. Here's the official gavel. Today's 1 p.m. A few housekeeping announcements that we're required to make at the beginning of each of our hearings. So the AEN committee hearing, including the audio and video of remote participants, is being streamed live on YouTube. Also, as an aside, members, I'm asking you to stick around right after the 1 o'clock hearing for a 1:30 p.m. hearing today. You may have seen it already. It's one item on the agenda. You'll find links to viewing options for all Senate meetings on the live and on-demand video page of the legislature's website, capitol.hawaii.gov. And in the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to major technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business at 2:15 p.m. on February 10th during our AEN via video conference time slot. And there'll also be a public notice that will be posted on the legislature's website. For our testifiers, all testifier audio will be muted and video disabled until shortly before it's your turn to testify. And because of our 90-minute time limit for each of the AEN hearings, there'll be a 2-minute time limit for all testifiers, and we will have a virtual countdown timer on the Zoom screen, so please be aware of the timer. I'll be announcing only the testifiers who will be providing testimony via Zoom, and for the complete list of testifiers, along with all of the written testimony, please go to the legislature's website and you'll find a link there on the status page for the measure. And so we apologize if the closed captioning does not accurately transcribe the names. Okay, so let's start off with Senate Bill 964 relating to waste management. Okay, this has to do with solid waste, waste disposal facility, buffer zone exemptions, artisan scale composting programs, and Department of Health. Part 1 of the bill broadens the definition of food waste as used in integrated solid waste management. It excludes facilities designed primarily for composting organic materials such as food waste and green waste, on-site school campus food waste programs, and recycling drop-off facilities from the requirement that waste or disposal facilities shall not be constructed, modified, or expanded without first establishing a buffer zone of not less than 1/2 mile from the nearest residential, school, or hospital property line. And then in part 2, this establishes a class of artisan scale composting operations exempt from Department of Health regulations to divert organic materials from Hawaii's landfills. Okay, and starting off, we have, let's see, Environmental Health Administration. We have a representative from there?
Yes, Senator.
DOH.
This is Lene Ichinotsubo, Department of Health, Solid and Hazardous Waste Branch. We stand on our written testimony, providing comment.
Okay, thank you. And next we have Brian Miyamoto from the Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We'll stand on his written testimony offering comments.
Okay, thank you. And that's it. I have a question for Department of Health.
Yes.
What's your name again, please?
Lene Ichinotsubo.
Okay, Lene. So your department, sorry, there's a helicopter right going over my house. Your department, you don't like part 2 of the bill that's related to artisan composting. However, the department is aware that many in the community think that the existing regulations are overburdensome. So what's the way to fix this in your mind?
So we have been talking to some of the people in the composting community, and we understand that there is a desire to promote greater composting opportunities in the community, and we support that. We believe that the interaction with the community through our permit application process is something that we can improve on already without rule revisions. And then that's the priority we put on ourselves, and we are working on modifying permit applications to make it more simplified for the smaller communities, smaller composting operations. So we think we can address those concerns that way. Our regulations already provides for a risk-based evaluation, and so we think we can address their concerns strictly through our permitting applications, which we already have the authority to revise.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any questions on the first bill, 964? Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 969 relating to animal fur products, prohibits the manufacture for sale, offer for sale, display for sale, sale, trade, or distribution of certain animal fur products in the state. And first up, we have Catherine Awakuni-Colon from DCCA.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Kat Awakuni-Colon on behalf of DCCA. You have our written testimony offering comments and appreciating the intent. We unfortunately do not have any purview or expertise, any other previous experience relating to fur products or animals or, kind of animal rights or any of those kinds of industries. So just wanted to point that out. I'd be happy to answer any comments or questions you may have. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Kat. Next, we have Gail Hanson from the Humane Society Veterinary Medical Association.
Hi, Senator. Gail Hanson is not in the room at this time.
Okay, moving on. PJ Smith from the Humane Society of the United States.
Thank you, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair, and members of the Agriculture and Environment Committee. My name is PJ Smith. I'm the Director of Fashion Policy for the Humane Society of the United States. And on behalf of HSUS and our supporters across Hawaii, we urge you to vote yes on Senate Bill 969. For over a decade, I've worked with dozens of the top apparel companies, including Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, Gucci, and Prada, to create policies that are good for animals and the environment. Consumers understand that there is no way to humanely source fur, and companies are responding by ending fur sales. But last year shined a new light on how deadly the fur trade is, not just to animals, but to humans as well. Fur-farmed mink are the only species known to transmit the coronavirus to humans. And foxes and raccoon dogs also tested positive during the SARS outbreak. When thousands of undomesticated animals are confined to small barren cages for their entire lives without the ability to engage in natural behaviors like running, digging, and swimming, that fear and psychological torment leads to self-mutilation and cannibalism. Add humans to that mix, and fur farms are a breeding ground for infectious diseases and potentially the next pandemic. Last year, outbreaks occurred on over 400 fur farms in 11 countries, including the United States, in Oregon, Utah, Wisconsin, and Michigan, after mink and humans tested positive. To prevent the spread, 20 million mink were killed. Sweden and Denmark suspended production, and France and the Netherlands announced the end of mink farming. Luckily, awareness and innovative alternatives that are just as warm and stylish are leading to positive change. California banned fur sales in 2019, and Oregon, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York, and Connecticut will be joining Hawaii in introducing fur sales bans of their own this year. Consumers care about animal welfare, the environment, and innovation more than ever. And with the passage of this bill, Hawaii will solidify its position as one of the nation's most humane states, is signal to the rest of the world that it will not contribute to this cruelty or risk to public health. Thank you.
Thank you, PJ. Thank you very much. Next is Todd Yukutake.
Senator Todd Yukutake is not in the room.
Okay, he offers comments, as well as Gail Hanson. She was in support. She's not here. And then finally on this bill, we have Mike Brown. Is Mike here? No Mike. Okay, Mike is opposed.
No, sir, I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Hey, Mike.
Hey, good afternoon. Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, my name is Mike Brown. I'm with the Natural Fibers Alliance. We're an environmental justice coalition comprised of producers and associations that support the use of natural and sustainable materials in clothing, accessories, and other goods. We oppose this bill for several quick reasons. First, the bill infringes on personal choice. What a person decides to wear is a private and personal decision. What we wear is an expression of ourselves as individuals, And there is no real movement across the US, Canada, and anywhere else that would suggest that government regulation is what people want and what people desire from their elected officials as a result, as it relates to legislation passed. Second, will harm current efforts to improve environmental sustainability. According to scientists at the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, microplastic pollution in our waterways is a major threat to marine life. Researchers estimate that synthetic fabric alone are responsible for up to 35% of the microplastic pollution in our oceans. Synthetic fibers, which are derived from fossil fuels, are the same materials that are used to make fake fur, fake wool, and other alternatives to natural fibers. Lastly, there are some, animal, folks within the animal activist community that have been, repeatedly found to somewhat exaggerate some of the claims that have been made. Just recently, a media watchdog blasted one activist driven anti-fur story as significant misleading. It was a piece that was done around China exportation of mink, and I believe it was a raccoon dog. I can't quite remember. But once again, this bill is somewhat of an overreach. I think we all are looking at what during this COVID epidemic, there's other things to really focus on. I recognize that legislators have a tough task, but this bill is an overreach. It's a personal choice issue. It does not serve the public interest.
Thank you very much, Mike. And let's see, I'm sorry, I skipped Melanie Calandra from the International Fur Federation. Melanie, aloha.
Aloha. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, and members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify against the proposed ban SB 969. My name is Melanie Calandra, and I'm a managing director at the International Fur Federation. Many of you have been given a great deal of misinformation. I know that those who would support this legislation would be doing so with good intentions, but you're being deceived. This draft legislation is riddled with vicious claims about the fur trade that are simply false. The fur trade in North America is a small-scale, family-run, artisanal industry. There's no legitimate basis to claim that fur is only a luxury item. Clothes remain very much a necessity, in some cases part of sustenance living, and fur is a more environmentally sustainable clothing choice. There's veterinary oversight and third-party certification in mink farming. Euthanization is considered the most humane in all livestock farming. They are euthanized with bottled carbon monoxide gas. Your bill talks about alternatives to fur, most of which are petroleum-based synthetics. These cause more harm to nature. Fur biodegrades at the rate of a willow leaf. In fact, ecosystems depend on the fur trade. Wild source fur is well regulated at the regional, state, and federal levels with 2 ISO standards and international agreements on humane trapping. Trapping will exist even with a fur ban because we need to protect and monitor endangered species. We need to help with the reintroduction of species into their original habitats like the American river otter. We need to help with public safety, prevention of property damage, and much more. The United States currently has the best wildlife management model in the world as a result. The fact remains, if you ban fur, it doesn't protect animals. It makes matters worse for them and for their ecosystem. Trapping also supports our indigenous and rural communities all over North America. I'm sure that local Hawaiians wouldn't want to cause stress and undue hardship to other indigenous communities across the continent. In closing, I strongly ask you to reconsider this ban, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Melanie. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to SB 1054 relating to brownfields cleanup revolving loan fund. Let's see, this enables use of funds for environmental site assessments and for subgrants to eligible entities for assessment and cleanup of brownfield sites. And first up on 1054, we have Ruby Edwards from the Office of Planning. Ruby?
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Aloha. I am Ruby Edwards. I'm testifying in support of this bill, standing on a written testimony of both OP and the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism for Mike McCarthy. Thank you so much.
Okay, and for Department of Health?
Hi, Senator Gabbard. They are missing from the call.
Missing. Okay. Anyone else? Members, any questions? Ruby, I have a question. Office of Planning.
Yes.
Yes, could you give a few examples of key projects that you could move forward on if this bill were to pass?
In the past, we've received inquiries from a senior affordable housing project that was going to be developed by a nonprofit housing entity at the old IAS sugar mill. The city and county of Honolulu is looking at cleaning up a parcel along the Pearl Harbor Historic Trail that would allow them to expand the trail, and it's currently warehouse light industrial with some contamination on site, and so they're negotiating to acquire that parcel in order to redevelop as part of the historic trail. It's those kinds of projects that really are not positioned to be able to undertake a loan at this time.
Okay, thank you, Ruby. Okay, no other questions. We'll move on to the next measure, SB 186, relating to restrictions on ag uses and activities. This disallows the enforcement of a re-recorded homeowners association restriction if the restriction prohibits bona fide agricultural uses and activities on ag land. And first up is Daniel Orodenker from the LUC. Daniel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We submitted testimony just without any position. We're here to answer questions as this matter involves Chapter 205.
Mahalo. And next is Phyllis Shimabukuro-Geyser from Department of Ag.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Phyllis Shimabukuro-Geyser, Chairperson, Department of Agriculture. The department supports the intent of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Brian Miyamoto from the Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. Brian Miyamoto on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Thank you for hearing this measure. This bill is going to prohibit enforcement of homeowners associations' renewal of ag restrictions on ag land. That sounds funny. Restricting ag operations as allowed in Chapter 205 by farmers on ag land. We think there was a gap in Act 170 in 2004, and this will correct it. Basically, in 2003, it didn't allow, I guess, those homeowner associations that were currently putting in place their rules to be affected by the law, but it wasn't retroactive. Now that they're renewing, we hope that they aren't able to restrict ag production and agriculture activities on agricultural lands. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Let's see here. Okay, any other questions? All right, moving on. SB 495 relating to ag. This updates the laws on agricultural cooperative associations and consumer co-op associations, including operations as resale agents and conversions. First up is Department of Ag.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. We offer comments in our written testimony, and we respectfully request that the committee consider the testimonies offered by existing ag cooperatives. We notice that the definition of person as it applies to agricultural cooperative associations is proposed to include individuals, partnerships, corporations, limited liability companies and associations, and sacred species and natural ecosystems. A sacred species or natural ecosystem may participate in the cooperative through a guardian speaking on behalf and in the best interest of the sacred species or natural ecosystem. There's no explanation as to the purpose of this, what this amendment serves. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next is Jeff Goodwin from UH.
Yes, appreciate the chance to share. UH and CTAR strongly support the concept of ag cooperatives and this bill, and we'll leave the legal details of the bill more versed in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Next is Addison Luck from the Earth Law Center.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Addison Luck, and I live in Kilauea, Kauai. I'm here representing Earth Law Center, a nonprofit that specializes in earth-centered laws and community-led movements that respect and protect all life on the planet. We at Earth Law Center stand by our written testimony and would like to emphasize that we are in strong support of including, quote, sacred species and natural ecosystems, end quote, in the definition of person within this bill. This language allows a cooperative to recognize the voice of a natural ecosystem and its governance structure, such as the land where food is grown or the water source that makes the cooperative's activities possible. This is aligned with the growing realization that recognizing the rights of corporations, but ignoring the rights of nature, has harmful social, environmental, and economic consequences. More than 12 countries, dozens of municipalities across the US, and several tribal nations have recognized nature's legal personhood. Including this language allows Hawaii's cooperatives to act as a leader within this movement and to consider the needs and desires of nature. Mahalo for your time.
Thank you, Addison. Next is Teresa Young from the Kohala Center. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I'm going to speak in support of SB 495. I think there's a lot of written testimony to support a lot of this. This really grew out of the co-op community here in Hawaii, and most of the suggestions that have been put forth and really came from that. So we hope that you support it. So I'm going to really speak, I guess, to the sacred species, since I only have 2 minutes, and the natural ecosystems, and why it's in there in relation to specifically cooperatives and Hawaii. So like a natural ecosystem, say there's a worker co-op that's going to take over a piece of land in Hawaii, and they go onto that land. And in Hawaii, it would be very appropriate for people to spend time on that land and be with that natural ecosystem to see what is there in relation to water, where things are growing now, and that they have a certain real communication with that piece of land. And that in their decision making as a small group in a co-op, that they could have someone to represent that land. And this is very traditional with Hawaii. I mean, kapuna speak for the mountain all the time. This is it is a natural part of the Hawaiian culture to be able to do that. This does not make it for everyone. We're talking specifically for co-ops and people who want to bring this kind of representation into their co-op. The other example for the sacred species, I'm going to have to bring forth the kalo plant and the practitioners who work with that plant. I have seen this plant act as a leader, as a coach, a teacher. I've seen it bring community together as a community developer. It's got history, it's got culture, it's got heritage, it has a lot. And the fact that a small group of people would want to honor that and allow that as a voice in their small co-op, in the decisions they make around what it is they do in a business, I think that if you could pass this in the legislature, it would just be honoring what is naturally already here in Hawaii, and allow that to come to life and have a place that people could actually recognize those things within the group that they do. So beyond that, I thank you for this. All of these are really going to help the co-op communities in Hawaii. So I thank you for considering this, and I hope that you pass all of these. Thank you so much.
Hello, mahalo, Teresa. Next is Brian Miyamoto from the Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support. Co-ops, agriculture co-ops will go a long way to help our small farmers by helping them reduce their costs and helping them with these shared services. So we are very supportive of agricultural co-ops. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Members, any questions? All right, seeing none. Next is Senate Bill 499 relating to pesticides. This increases administrative and criminal penalties for those who violate the Hawaii pesticides law. First up is UHCTAR. Jeff Goodwin.
Yes, we support this bill and defer to HDOA as to any limitations that might be inherent in the application of the bill. Thank you.
Mahalo, Jeff. And HDOA is next. Phyllis.
Good afternoon. Aloha, Chair and Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony offering comments in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Lyons with the Hawaii Pest Control Association. Take off your mute, unmute. There you go. Oh. Nope, still muted. There it is.
Hear me now. Okay.
Gotcha.
We're going to have to take the contrary view and oppose this bill. Our problem is that we just have not heard any evidence at all of situations where the maximum fines currently were insufficient as a deterrent, particularly as it relates to structural pest control operators. And I think it's important to remember that all the penalty money that comes out for a fine is money that can't be reinvested back into that business. The other item is, of course, is that as we have learned, is if a particular violation is particularly bad, it gets turned over to EPA, and EPA can fine megabucks, far more exceeding this current statute. Based on that, as well as the fact that in the case of structural pest control operators, they are also regulated by the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs and under the jurisdiction of RICO, the Regulated Industry Complaints Office. And as a result, they can get their penalties and fines there on top of these. So based on that, we are in opposition to increase in the fines. Thank you.
Mahalo, Tim. Next is Brian Miyamoto from the Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bill will stand on its written testimony respectfully opposing this measure. We believe the fines are sufficient and significant. And, for small farmers, even the current penalties with the fines and the negative publicity, it could really hurt their businesses. So we do believe that the current fines are sufficient. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Brian. And that's it for the testifiers. Members, any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next measure. Senate Bill 719 relating to pesticides requires the Department of Ag in consultation with the Department of Health to develop and implement a one-time pesticide disposal collection program for a duration to be determined by the department. Requires the Department of Ag to convene a steering committee to guide and monitor the pesticide disposal collection program. Increases the civil and criminal penalties for violating the Hawaii pesticides law and appropriates monies. First up is Department of Ag. Phyllis?
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department stands on its written testimony, strongly supporting this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next up is Tim Lyons from the Hawaii Pest Control Association.
Thank you, Chair. Our comments on the penalties remain the same as the prior bill. As it relates to the disposal program, we are excluded, and we're not sure why, but we're excluded from this program because of the definition of bona fide agricultural entity, which we are not. So we think that's a glaring omission and discriminatory, and we would respectfully request inclusion into the disposal program. We are regulated by DOA, we're fined by DOA, we're educated by DOA. We have a seat on the advisory committee that's going to administer this program, but we're not included in the program. So based on that, we would respectfully request inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next is Emmanuel Zibakalam from the Hawaii Crop Improvement Association.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Emmanuel Zibakalam here on behalf of the Hawaii Crop Improvement Association. We stand on our written testimony in support of the intent of this measure. However, in regards to the administrative and criminal penalties, we will defer to the larger agricultural community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Next is Brian Miyamoto from the Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bill will stand on its written testimony supporting Part 1. We are very supportive of this program. In fact, about a dozen years ago, the Hawaii Farm Bill partnered with HDOA to do a program such as this. It really helps to get those chemicals off of the farms and dispose of them properly. We do have concerns with Part 2, similar to SB 499. But as far as the program, we're very supportive of the program. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions?
Chair Gabbard, I have a comment. I'm in support of this, in support of this measure. However, I think we should be very clear that the only acceptable disposal option really is to ship it back to the supplier.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Moving on to SB 855 relating to coffee pest control. This extends the sunset date for the coffee bearer borer pesticide subsidy program and the program manager position, including the position civil service and collective bargaining laws exemption, to June 30th, 2024, and provides that no single coffee grower shall receive more than $6,000 for each pest per year in subsidies between June 30th, 2021 and July 1st, 2023. First up is Nick Comerford from CTAR UH.
Thanks, Senator. Nicholas Comerford is.
I'll be substituting for Nick.
Okay.
So as coffee is one of the most important ag commodities grown in Hawaii, and pests such as coffee berry borer and coffee leaf rust pose such a threat, we strongly support this bill and stand on a written testimony. Thank you,
Jeff. Next is Department of Ag. Phyllis.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. The department supports this measure and offers the following comments. The pesticide subsidy program is currently funded by the Pest Inspection, Quarantine, and Eradication Special Fund. The department understands that the future of special funds is uncertain, and we're also unsure whether the existing expenditure ceiling is adequate to fund and efficiently perform the additional program responsibilities proposed in this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next is Bruce Corker from Rancho Aloha. Hello, Bruce.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Nishihara, and members of the committee. I am a coffee farmer in the North Kona District of Hawai'i County, and I am a member of the Kona Coffee Farmers Association Board of Directors. I am in support of SB 855 and offer the following two comments. The first would be that, as suggested by the HDOA in its testimony on SB 128, we believe that it is better to add CLR subsidies to the current HDOA program for CBB subsidies to coffee farmers, rather than set up a separate CLR administrative program and administrator. That's what SB 855 does, and SB 128 and 29 do not do. They set up separate programs. Second, in addition to extending the HDOA program and adding CLR to the program, please add funding to the program for at least the next biennium so that SB 855 and the HDOA program will be able to support the coffee as a viable commercial crop in the state of Hawaii. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Chris Manfredi from the Hawaii Coffee Association.
Aloha, Chair. Chris Manfredi, testifying for Hawaii Coffee Association. We like this bill. We like that it extends the sunset of the coffee berry borer subsidy program. That's been a success story for our members and the broader industry. Helps level the playing field with producers located across the globe and helps cut some of the high costs of production for Hawaiian coffee. We like that it expands the program to include coffee leaf rust, which poses a much more devastating threat to the industry than coffee berry borer ever did or ever will. We have attached to our testimony the value of the coffee industry to the state, both in terms of our white paper that examines those values, as well as the state ranking of crop value, with coffee being number 2. As an industry, we've identified short-term and long-term responses to coffee leaf rust. The short-term is pesticide applications to slow the spread. Long-term is a transition to rust-resistant varieties. We're navigating the regulatory process for that. but our growers do need some help in financing the replacement of their trees. So I understand it's a challenging year fiscally, but if we could establish a program and think about funding it later, at least we could get the establishment of a program in place, patterned after the forestry stewardship program that we outlined in our testimony. This measure has broad support. We appreciate the introducers for bringing it. We thank the committee and its chair for hearing it, and we thank you for your support.
Thank you, Chris. Next is Bernard Markowitz for Intellinair.
Aloha, Senator Chair.
Hello.
I'm Bernard Markowitz with Intellinair. Intellinair is a company that is in the precision agriculture business and develops information management and analytics to identify pests and diseases in the field. I'm based on Kauai. I'm the Director of Operations for Hawaii. We've been working for 3 years with Kauai Coffee, the University of Hawaii, and Dole Food Hawaii as well, to develop methods to help manage pests and diseases, including CBB and leaf rust. And we have a proposal in front of the National Science Foundation to improve these. These methods ultimately would reduce the need for pesticides, but it will take some time for these methods, artificial intelligence and machine learning methods, to bear fruit. Therefore, we believe that the next 2 to 3 years will be critical to contain and maintain and control these diseases that are really critical for the coffee industry in Hawaii. So we support the bill as it is. Thank you very much.
Mahalo, Bernard. Questions for the testifiers? Hearing none, moving on to Senate Bill 1235 relating to ag. This establishes 2 new positions on the Board of Ag and specifies that one shall be a resident of the island of Molokai and one shall be a resident of the island of Lanai. And first up is Department of Ag. Phyllis.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department has strong concerns, and we have mentioned our comments in our written testimony. The measure seeks to ensure representation of the islands of Molokai and Lanai agriculture communities on the board. The board has established with members from each of 4 counties to address the concern from this inception. Currently we do have a member on our board that holds an at-large position that is employed by Agricultural Operational Lanai and is a member that is very well knowledgeable of controlled environmental agriculture, and which is an example of ag technology and innovation at the highest level in Hawaii. The same member also has a diverse experience of agriculture production and food systems on the island of Hawaii. Keeping the 4 at-large positions provides the most diverse representation of agricultural knowledge and experience. Currently, any person as a resident of Molokai or Lanai can apply to be considered and nominated as an at-large member of the Board of Agriculture. Within our department, we also have exclusive opportunities for residents of Molokai to have a voice and decision-making vote as a member of our Molokai Irrigation System Water Users Advisory Board for the Molokai Irrigation System Water Service. It has been a challenge for the department to fill vacant advisory positions with Molokai residents. And for these reasons, that's why we have strong concerns on the measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. That's the only testifier on SB 1235. Members, any questions? Moving on to the final measure on the 1 o'clock agenda. It's SB 1250 relating to emergency food management. This creates the Hawaii Emergency Food Assistance Program Special Fund to be administered by the Department of Ag and appropriates monies into the fund to feed Hawaii's needy population when a state of emergency has been declared. First up, Department of Ag. Phyllis.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. The department appreciates the intent of the measure as long as it does not adversely impact priorities in our executive budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next is Lauren Zerbel from Hawaii Food Industry Association.
Hi, I'm Alexis Chapman for HFIA, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. HFIA is in support of this measure. Just to highlight one point from our testimony, our food banks and food pantries are vital not only because they provide food to those in need, but during times of crisis, as we've been experiencing, they actually help stabilize the entire food supply chain. Creating and funding this program is the type of support that these organizations need, and it can help make the entire state better prepared and more resilient. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Next is Daniela Spoto from the Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice.
Aloha, and thank you, Senator. Yes, as you said, I'm Daniela Spoto, Director of Anti-Hunger Initiatives at the Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice. I'm also a member of a group called the Hawaii Hunger Action Network, which is a network of nearly all of the state's food banks and several charitable feeding organizations. This group has been meeting for about 3 years, and in that time, over that period, we have seen Hawaii's weathered many crises. We have seen multiple floods, hurricane scares, tsunami scares, government shutdowns, economic downturns, and now, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. Through each one of these crises, officials from the state and county emergency management call upon our food banks to respond. And I have listened as these organizations have stepped up through each of these crises, scrambled to find funding from philanthropy. And up until the CARES Act stimulus funds that were received this year, there has never been, and some GIA funding that the food banks have received, there has never been any funding available to these organizations in times of crisis like this. We feel it's time for these organizations to be recognized for what they are as critical community institutions to respond to these crises. So Hawaii would not be the first to be funding these kinds of programs. There's several other states that have emergency food assistance programs. What I love about this proposal is that it actually ties the funding to a disaster proclamation and also to the requirement that it is spent on locally grown products, which would be a nice stimulus effect if it were to go into effect. We understand the budget situation this year, and we just want to acknowledge that we think it's an important insurance policy and one that we hope that we'll never have to use, but that we right away have to. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. Next is Peggy Mirzwa from the Aloha Care.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Peggy Mirzwa with Aloha Care. You have our written testimony in support of this measure. And much like Daniela was saying, this measure really is unique because it helps to support the food banks and getting people their food, but also supporting our local economy and farmers through the purchasing of locally grown and produced products. So thank you so much for hearing this measure.
Okay, next we have Micah Munakata from Ulupono.
Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Nishihara, and members of the committee. Micah Munikata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We are in strong support of this measure, similar to a measure this committee previously heard, Chair, with the SNAP Double Up. This measure also seeks to support the community feeding needs, this particular one with regards to food distribution outlets. The pandemic has definitely shown us how needy our community can get in times of trouble. And there are a bunch of statistics and data points that we included in our testimony, Chair. Don't really want to go through too many of them. Maybe just highlight some of the spending around the Hawaii Food Bank as an example. In 2020, the Hawaii Food Bank had an annual budget of $400,000 to supply food to the community throughout the year. They actually ended up spending closer to $12 million, an estimated $12 million in feeding. The way this translates into sort of pounds of food is in 2019, the Hawaii Food Bank had distributed 12 million pounds of food. In 2020, they had distributed 18.3 million pounds of food. Substantial increases around the community for feeding. And one of the great things, again, similar to what we mentioned with SNAP, is the connection to local producers here in the state during this pandemic. I know we have other testifiers here that can speak to this story a little bit more clear, but basically local producers are connecting with these food distribution outlets and providing much needed food for the community. And this also is supporting local farmers and ranchers that have lost markets during this pandemic, upwards of $2.2 million lost per week from a local producer standpoint. So any kind of market support for our local producers is key and is critical to keeping our agriculture moving in the right direction. Again, wanted to state that, understanding the economic situation we're in, establishment of this program is going to be critical. Creating a mechanism to which we can fund these emergency feeding needs across the community is going to be key. And, should funding not be available, I think the establishment is really what's needed. This will help to support Hawaii moving into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Micah. Brian Miyamoto from Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. Brian Miyamoto on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. I don't know if you noticed the shirt I'm wearing. It's the Hawaii Food Bank. I'm not going to repeat what has been said, all the stats and the positive of the program. I do want to focus on the ties to local ag, like Daniela started. We're in a crisis right now, and we've had many other emergencies. Food is critical. Our friends and family, our neighbors, they need food, and the food banks have stepped up. Primarily, we work with the Hawaii Food Bank, but we've also worked with Hawaii Food Basket, Maui Food Bank, Kauai Food Bank, and the Kauai Independent Food Bank. Just with the Hawaii Farm Bureau, the impact to local agriculture, about $5 million in purchases of local produce and protein. You heard Mr. Munikata talk about a $2 million plus loss per week. Our farmers and ranchers lost 40 to 60% of their market when COVID hit. So that $5 million plus of produce didn't have anywhere to go. The food bank stepped up. Mr. Ron Muzutani, who had recently left, really stepped up and made a commitment to buy local. And it just really helped, again, our families who are in need. But our farmers and ranchers has helped them continue to farm, continue to grow, continue to help and work towards food security. Critically important. And we all understand that we are facing a $1.4 billion budget crisis. But the Farm Bureau stands in strong support of this measure and any program that's going to support our families and our farmers. We ask you to support this measure. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Mahalo, Brian. Next is Hunter Hevelin.
Well, Chair Gabbard and members of the committee, I'm Hunter Hevelin. I'm a food systems planner and have been working with emergency feeding programs across the state over the course of this pandemic, and would like to strongly support this bill, but also to elucidate some aspects of Hawaii's emergency feeding system that may help contextualize some of my comments. The Federal Emergency Management Agency applies a national response framework that utilizes sets of key sort of lifelines, one of which is the Emergency Support Function 6, which focuses on mass care, emergency assistance, temporary housing, and human services. It's a lot to handle. Currently, HIEMA operates this national framework and applies it here, and the Emergency Support Function 6 is convened by the Department of Human Services. The Salvation Army has the MOU with the state for community feeding, whereas, however, counties are responsible for administration of community feeding efforts, and those counties work closely with food banks for these distribution efforts. In the 9 months I've been participating in the ESF 6 calls, the Hawaii Department of Agriculture has not participated. Obviously, we are all tapped beyond imagination, but I would recommend consideration of housing this fund either within HIEMA or the Department of Human Services. DHS, for example, already fields the administration of the USDA's Emergency Food Assistance Program and has relationships with the primary food banks. Additionally, a coalition of feeding organizations across the state has convened as the Hawaii Hunger Action Network over the past couple of years, and ensuring that this bill requires a strong tether with that entity is also advisable. Presumably, this bill was drafted to be housed within HDOA due to the connection to local producers and products, and that relationship should be reinforced. And I strongly support this bill overall, but would hope that the administration of these connections in practice, which will inevitably be managed by the food banks themselves, are facilitated in some part by HDOA. But if they are going to take on this leadership role, I believe that it is critical for their continued support by participating in the emergency support function system of the state's emergency programming. Thank you.
Mahalo, Hunter. Members, any questions? Okay, members, what I've decided to do is we're going to take I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the 1 o'clock hearing, and then we'll do the decision making during the 1:30 hearing, which is I'm going to start right now. There's just that one bill, so I'll adjourn. One measure on the agenda, it's SB 180 relating to deposit beverage containers. And this measure exempts a beverage dealer who is located in a high density population area from operating a redemption center if the dealer is located within 1 mile of a certified redemption center operated independently of the dealer. It requires the Department of Health to annually adjust the handling fees for the deposit beverage container program to an amount not less than the handling fee in the prior calendar year, as adjusted by percentage changes in the Consumer Price Index for the Honolulu area. It takes effect July 1st, 2023. First up, we have Environmental Health Administration from DOH.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. My name is Michael Burke, and I'm with the Department of Health, Office of Solid Waste Management. We stand on our written testimony offering comments to this bill. Thank you.
Mahalo. Next up is Lauren Zerbo with the Hawaii Food and Industry Association.
Chair, Vice Chair, I'm Alexis Chapman with HFIA. We're in opposition to this measure. We believe that prior to making any changes to the handling fee, it's necessary to fix the existing problems with the High Five program. Increasing the handling fee means asking consumers to contribute more to High Five, which is an unfair request given the current state of the program. And I think we've all seen the audit, so I won't go into detail there. We also oppose language in the measure that would change the redemption center exemption distance for a retailer in a high density area from 2 miles to 1 mile. The bill doesn't provide reasons for why this change would be necessary or beneficial. So we ask that the measure be held, and we thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Alexis. Next is Bruce Iverson from Reynolds Recycling. Aloha, Bruce.
Vice Chair. Aloha, Chair and Vice Chair, members of the committee. Bruce Iverson for Reynolds Recycling. We strongly support this measure. It's, you have our testimony, so I'll just reiterate one point where, especially in the dense Honolulu corridor, where it's very difficult for people to, they actually have to travel long distances to get to a redemption center. Changing the requirement from 2 miles to 1 mile would certainly make it much easier for a lot of consumers to redeem their containers. So we just hope that the committee would be able to pass this forward and keep this discussion going. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Bruce.
And I'm here for questions if you need me.
Great. Members, any questions? Senator.
Yep, thank you. I have a question, I guess, for Department of Health in that in relating to the audit and what has come out as far as the deficiencies, what will be or has been implemented since the audit to correct the deficiencies in relationship to the recycling and High Five?
Thank you for that question, Senator Ocasio. Since over the past year and a half, obviously, you know, as with many state agencies, we're impacted, but we have started to work on and implement a pilot project to address the issues that were raised in the audit with regards to the recycling centers and how to track and manage what has been turned in by a consumer, what's been then processed by the recycler, and then ultimately where it goes. We are currently also working on a request for proposals so that we can get a better handle on the distributors, and those are the producers, manufacturers, and importers who are bringing in deposit beverage containers into the state, which would also address that second leg of the audit report. Right now we're in flux because of spending restrictions, and certainly there are some uncertainties with regards to special funds and the funds we may have available. But certainly our expectation is to really start hammering home on implementing those auditors' recommendations, so that we can finally get that put to bed and addressed.
Do we have specifics already addressed to specifically address that issue, or is still very much in the formative stage?
No, we have already started implementing at a low level. Like I said, looking at the recycling centers, we started with a smaller one just to see if these are things that we can do internally. One, being able to do it internally for us, it's easier in some ways than putting it out to bid, because there are some responsibilities that we should be responsible for. And so it's not a conceptual thing. It's not something that we're not sitting around just talking about it. We are actually implementing things, as well as trying to refine how we're going about collecting the information we need from the recyclers. We have also been working on our recruitment. We're happy to announce that we have brought in an additional inspector. And so that too goes hand in hand with our piloting of the review on the redemption center side. And again, all feeds into addressing the audit recommendations.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, members, we'll take a recess now. And Matt, if we could go into Aloha, reconvening the 1:30 agenda. We are going through decision making. We had two hearings today, one at 1 o'clock, one at 1:30. We'll start off with the 1 o'clock decision making for the 1 o'clock hearing first. Having conferred with my colleagues on the committee, we'll start off with SB 964 relating to waste management. Okay, on this measure, the chair's recommendation will be to pass SB 964 with amendments. Members, last session we passed SB 2386, which was enacted as Act 73. This law prohibits new landfills within the half-mile buffer zone and from being located in the conservation district. Department of Health wants to piggyback on Part 1 of this bill to fix a problem created by Act 73. So what we'll do is we'll take DOH's amendments to reinstate Department of Health's authority over federal landfill facilities so that the state isn't in non-compliance of 40 code federal regulations. Part 239, subpart C, quote, requirements for adequate permit programs, unquote. So on page 1, line 10, we'll add the term, quote, any federal agency, unquote. And additionally, at the request of DOH to clarify that composting facilities are already excluded from the buffer zone requirement, we'll remove the extraneous wording waste or, quote unquote, in two places in section 2, part B, and we'll also remove the portion of the statute that excludes redemption centers from the waste or disposal facility, quote or unquote, on page 3, lines 9 and 10. And as for part 2, related to artisan scale composting, this chair acknowledges DOH's concerns about the blanket exemption of all DOH rules in this bill, which would negatively impact human health and the environment. However, DOH needs to step up and put more time and effort into letting us know how the proposal before us can be amended to solve the bill's purpose. So what we'd like to do is to defect the date in the bill to July 1st, 2050, and request that DOH come up with some language that can be included in this bill as it moves forward. And there's also some tech amendments. So that's the recommendation. Any comments, members? I'll take the vote. The chair votes aye. Vice Chair Nishihara?
Aye.
Senator Ocasio?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you, members. The measure passes. Moving on to SB 969 relating to animal fur products. The chair's recommendation, while I appreciate DCCA's comments about a lack of expertise in the fur trade, but actually no state department is an expert here locally. I believe strongly that it's appropriate for our state to recognize the harm that the animal fur trade creates. So the chair's recommendation will be to pass SB 969 with tech amendments. Okay, any comments? Chair will take the vote. The chair votes aye. Vice Chair Nishihara.
Aye.
Senator Ocasio.
With reservations.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
The measure passes. Mahalo, members. Moving on to SB 1054, relating to Brownfields Cleanup Revolving Fund. The chair's recommendation will be to pass SB 1054 with amendments. Any comments? I'll take the vote. The chair votes aye. Vice Chair Nishihara.
Aye.
Senator Ocasio.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
The measure passes. Mahalo, members. Moving on to SB 186, related to restrictions on ag uses and activities. Members, as the Office of Planning stated in their testimony, this measure is needed to prevent the restriction of agricultural uses and activities on lots within the state agricultural district. So the chair's recommendation will be to pass SB 186 as is. Any comments? I'll take the vote. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Nishihara.
Aye.
Senator Ocasio.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
The measure passes. Mahalo, members. Moving on to SB 495, having to do with agricultural cooperative associations. Remember, this bill would amend the existing agricultural cooperative statute amendments to provide more flexibility. And in coming up with this bill, the Kohala Center staff, they reached out to 21 Hawai'i cooperatives through email or text to request their participation in this survey interview. And they had 14 responses. The cooperatives that were interviewed were mostly on the Big Island, but there were cooperatives from Molokai, Maui, and Oahu that were also represented. The survey results showed that all the co-ops interviewed had some part to play in Hawaii agriculture. So in reviewing Hawaii's agriculture cooperative law for possible amendments, the Kohala Center, they considered comments by the surveyed co-ops along with their review of agricultural cooperative statutes in other states, in particular Florida, Maryland, Virginia, and Utah. So this bill amends the definition of quote unquote person to include sacred species and natural ecosystems. As background, the definition of quote unquote person has expanded over time. This suggested expansion is in line with both new movements and indigenous values and recognizes that sacred species and natural ecosystems may be part of a cooperative association. The expanded definition of person, quote unquote, expresses a way in which cooperatives can give a voice to nature and is an important step toward placing Hawaii at the forefront of a global movement aligned with Hawaii's cultural values. This concept expands upon the already familiar one that the sacred kalo plant is an ancestor of the Hawaiian people. For example, a kalo producers co-op may wish to honor the sacred plant by giving the plant a seat at the table, so to speak. The guardian representative for kalo might wish to weigh in on such issues as how the plant is grown, processed, and honored. So the chair's recommendation will be to pass SB 495 with amendments. We will take DCCA's suggestion and change the bolded on page 5, line 16 to read, quote, HRS 421C-36, crossing out exemption of floating stock, and then adding cooperative interest issues to members exempt from registration, unquote. And that's because section 421C-36 currently pertains to only the voting interest issued by a cooperative to a member that are exempt from registration under Hawaii securities laws. And this bill amends that section to also include the non-voting interest issued by a cooperative to a member that are exempt from registration under Hawaii securities laws, specifically HRS section 485A-2018. And there's also some tech amendments. Hang on one second here. Yeah. Okay, and that's it. So any comments? I'll take the vote. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Nishihara.
Aye.
Senator Ocasio.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela. Senator Favela. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you, members. Okay, and I just got a note here. I just wanted to clarify earlier on the vote on the Brownfields SB 1054 that there were tech amendments that were made. That was it. Okay, so moving on to SB 499 relating to pesticides. Members, what we're going to do on this is defer SB 499 indefinitely, and instead we're going to use SB 719 as a vehicle, since it was introduced by the majority leader and it includes a one-time pesticide disposable collection program. Moving on to SB 719 relating to pesticides. The chairs, this is, let's see here. This is Department of Ag in consultation with the Department of Health, developing and implementing a one-time pesticide disposal collection program. And so the recommendation will be to pass SB 719 with tech amendments. Any comments? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Aye.
Senator Ocasio?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Favela?
Aye.
Thank you, members. Measure passes. Moving on to SB 855 relating to coffee pest control. Members, we heard SB 128 and SB 129 on February 1st. And these bills also related to these topics. We deferred SB 129 related to the coffee bearer borer subsidy program. But at the request of Senator Kanuha, we passed SB 128 related to the fungicides to combat coffee leaf rust for further discussion. So today's bill, SB 855, is the preferred vehicle because it encompasses both the coffee bearer borer and coffee leaf rust issues. So the chair's recommendation will be to pass SB 855 as is. Any comments? Okay, Senator Ocasio.
Were we allowed for amendments possibly?
This is the ones that we were going to include in the committee report.
Yes, okay.
Yes, okay. Senator Ocasio had some comments that she wanted to include in the committee report, which is what we will do. Senator Ocasio, would you like to just give a summary of what you had mentioned?
So in some of our research, our concerns are the need to amend language of the bill to include and allow for non-herbicide pesticide use solutions to the same problems, recognizing that this issue is very important to protect the integrity of the crops and the trees and the farmers, but yet to include subsidy for things perhaps like Korean natural farming methods and organic methods to also help combat the issue. There are also some concerns within the community that there's management entities working with farmers and that farmers and those living on the properties would be exposed and subjected to Prioxar without their permission, and to address that issue is really important. And lastly, just in addressing maybe the change to rust-resistant varieties, is that there may be issues with that in terms of changing the Kona coffee labeling and requirement, what makes Kona coffee if the varieties are changed, and that maybe not all farmers are wanting to change their variety. And so to kind of incorporate all of those ideas.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Acosta. We'll include those in the committee report. All right. So moving on to SB 1235, relating to ag, adding the 2 new positions to the Board of Ag from Molokai and Lanai. The chair's recommendation would be to pass SB 1235 with tech amendments. Any comments? Seeing none, the chair votes aye. Vice Chair Nishihara.
Aye.
Senator Ocasio.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
The measure passes. Thank you, members. And finally, on the 1 o'clock agenda, let's see, we have SB 1250 related to the emergency food management. Chair's recommendation would be to pass this measure, SB 1250, with amendments. Per the Department of Ag's testimony, will amend the language on page 2, line 20 by deleting quote unquote or mayor, since the state agency cannot be activated for emergency response until a state of emergency is declared by the governor. And there are some tech amendments. Any comments? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair. Aye. Senator Ocasio.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Thank you, members. The measure passes. And then the one.
Senator?
Yes.
This is Rock. I don't think you took a vote on 855.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So we'll take the vote on 855 now that we had discussed. All right. That we added the committee. So on 855. Yeah, that's right. So I gave the recommendations to pass as is. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Nishihara.
Aye.
Senator Ocasio.
With reservations.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Okay, and then that concludes the 1 o'clock agenda. We have the one measure on the 1:30 agenda. And so that was for SB 180 relating to deposit beverage containers. Chair's recommendation will be to pass SB 180 with amendments. Per Department of Health will change the effective date by 1 year to July 1st, 2024, so that the department may convene an advisory committee for HRS section 342G-122 to revise the Hawaii Administrative Rules section 11-282-31 to update the dealer exemptions to operate redemption centers. And there's also some tech amendments. Any comments? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Nishihara?
Chair, I did have a comment.
Yes.
So I'm just going to vote with reservations, not because I think it's probably an improvement, but I have never quite understood why it's unreasonable to require that businesses that sell, especially sodas where you make so much money, can't also take the empties back. So just WR for me. Thanks.
WR, your vote noted. Thank you. Senator Ocasio?
I vote no.
Senator Favela?
No.
Okay, we have the, the measure passes. Thank you, members. So that concludes the hearings. Aloha. Mahalo.